I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I'm going to talk about the radical Tao Te Ching. When I was a child, I enjoyed checking out my primary school's bookshop. It was a small concrete booth near the canteen, mainly selling textbooks, notebooks, drawing pads, and stationery. But one day I noticed a compass on display. I had never seen one before, not even in books or on TV, and so I asked the bookshop keeper what it was. He said it was to help people find direction. That blew my mind. I imagined it to be a magic device capable of telling its owners where to go and what to do. I had to have it. So I skipped a few meals during recess to save up my pocket money. However, when I finally had it, I did not know what to do with it. It had a pointer that seemed to float inside a small metal casing with a transparent plastic cover. When I rotated it, the needle continued pointing towards the end, inscribed on the edge, even though it took a while to get there. Sometimes it got stuck, so it pointed somewhere else to the other letters like S, E, and W, or in between them. I later learned what those letters stood for, about magnetism of ferromagnetic substances and the Earth's magnetic field. The compass was of course not the magical device I thought I could purchase for a few dollars at the bookshop. Magnetism was kind of amazing and so was a compass, but it did not give me direction. It gave directions. Obviously, I misunderstood the bookshop keeper. He was not entirely wrong though. The compass tells us where north is, and if north is where we want to go, we can follow it and get there. However, whether we should go north or elsewhere and how to get there, if we so decide it is where we should go, are entirely different matters. The Tao Te Ching is in a way like the compass and in a way like the magical device I thought I was buying. It is about the Tao, literally the way, with capital T and capital W. As we will soon discover, it is in a way easy to understand and in a way very difficult. It does tell you which direction you should go and even how to get there, but to follow its direction is not easy. Written by Laozi, who lived in the state of Chu in 6th century BCE, the Tao Te Ching is the foundational text of Daoism, one of two major religions that arose indigenously in China, the other being Confucianism. Like Confucianism, its beginning is philosophical. Who is Laozi? He is about 20 years older than Confucius or Kongzi. However, it remains controversial whether such a man as Laozi actually existed. His name literally means the old master, and some scholars speculate that the Tao Te Ching is actually a series of aphorisms developed over centuries and then collected together to form the Tao Te Ching. However, according to the traditional account by Sima Qian, the great historian of China, Laozi was born Li and was keeper of the royal archives. Kongzi came to visit it to ask Laozi about the ritual ceremonies of the ancient kings. Laozi told him, "The ancients you admire have been in the ground a long time. Their bones have turned to dust. Only their words remain. Those among them who were wise rode in carriages when times were good and slipped quietly away when times were bad. I have heard the clever merchant hides his wealth so his store looks empty, and that the superior man acts dumb so he can avoid calling attention to himself. I advise you to get rid of your excessive pride and ambition. They won't do you any good. That is all I have to say to you." Kongzi later told his disciples, "Today when I met Laozi, it was like meeting a dragon." Laozi later took his own advice and left the capital. He had to pass through Hankou Pass, and its warden Yingzi recognized Laozi and asked him for instruction. That was when Laozi composed and gave Yingzi the Tao Te Ching, after which he continued his journey and faded into anonymity. The book did not have a title then, and hence, even today, it is also known as the Laozi, after its author. This is not unusual. The other two preeminent texts of the Taoist tradition, the Zhuangzi and the Liezi, are also named after their purported authors. Nonetheless, the book has two major themes, with some considering it as two parts. The two themes are on the way, or Tao, and the other on virtue, or De. Jing means ancient classic, and so the Tao Te Ching is the ancient classic of the way and virtue. This classic is a rather brief book. It has only about 5,000 characters. The Chinese script is not based on the alphabet, but are pictograms, each being pronounced as a single syllable. When read in its entirety, the Tao Te Ching will take less than an hour. To understand it, however, may take lifetimes. Ponder upon that for a moment. The original has no punctuation or chapter divisions. These were added by later scholars, dividing the verses into 81 chapters. It is written in a poetic style, and if you read or listen to it in Chinese, you may recognize the poetic devices of rhythm and rhyme. Let this suffice as an introduction to the text. I want to move on to my motivation for writing this translation and commentary. The Tao Te Ching is among the most translated books ever, only behind the Bible and some say the Bhagavad Gita. It has some 250 translations into various languages, with over 100 of them in English. Prior to this current attempt, I have already read it at least twice in previous years in translation. I had just finished reading the Liezi and previously the Zhuangzi, which I have made a video essay on. Both are a collection of anecdotes illuminating the principles of Taoist philosophy, and I thought to write an essay on what these principles are. This led me back to the Tao Te Ching, for that is precisely what the Tao Te Ching is about. It outlines the fundamentals of the Tao and its implications for how to live. Since the Tao Te Ching is aphoristic poetry, to unpack it is really an expansion and not a further condensation for what is already rather dense. In this current attempt, which I began with Red Pine's edition, I realized that I had a problem with the various translations. The translations sometimes do not quite correspond to the Chinese text, and if you look at translations side by side, they sometimes even translate the same text in opposing ways. That cannot be logically correct. However, translation often involves interpretation. Different languages do not have one-to-one correspondences. Some ideas and concepts in one language or culture do not find easy matches in another language. I believe it is for these reasons that there are hundreds of translations of the Tao Te Ching, each different in significant ways from one another. No critical edition has emerged despite the book being 2,500 years old, because no single translation is superior. I am Chinese ethnically and I come from Singapore. I know the Chinese language, though my ability is at best mediocre. Paradoxically, because my Chinese is weaker than my English language abilities, it is exactly why I need to translate the Tao Te Ching, so that I can better understand it. But if you told my Chinese language teachers in school that I will one day attempt to translate the Tao Te Ching, they would laugh you out of the room. However, even native Chinese literati will require help in reading the Tao Te Ching, unless they are scholars of the classics or philologists. The text is written in classical Chinese, which differs not entirely but enough from contemporary Chinese to itself require translation. That is why numerous commentaries have been written to aid readers. I also turned to the commentaries compiled by Red Pine when I needed explication. I used the original Chinese text but in the simplified script. The simplified script comes from a language reform in China in the 1950s, and is what is used as the standard in China today. There is a character-by-character correspondence between the traditional and simplified script, so it is not quite a translation, but a script reform aimed at enhancing literacy given the difficulty in learning the traditional script. In any case, anyone who has studied Chinese as a foreign language will tell you that the simplified script is by no means simple. I obtained the Chinese text from yellowbridge.com. It contains the traditional and simplified Chinese text. It has a helpful mouse-over dictionary function alongside translations by James Legger from 1891, D.T. Suzuki and Paul Carus from 1913, and Dwight Goddard and Henri Borel from 1919. I also referred to Red Pine's translation published by Mercury House in 1996. I checked the Chinese text occasionally at ctext.org and Red Pine. I further referred to tasuki.org. It contained more translations, but the ones I used are Gie Fu Feng from 1972, Stephen Adis and Stanley Lombardo from 1993, Derek Lin from 1994, and Agnieszka Solska from 2005, avoiding those by people who do not actually know the Chinese language. My work here on the Tao Te Ching is clearly not authoritative or scholarly. If you are looking for something authoritative or scholarly, you will be spoiled for choice. This is not it. What this is an attempt to translate the text prosaically, without poetic flourishes like how some translators such as Legger and Suzuki have done. And I try to stick with the Chinese text as closely as I am able to, without interpretation, though some is unavoidable given ambiguities which I try to clarify. I aimed to keep my choice of words consistent, though it can be difficult since I did not translate while maintaining a critical apparatus, and sometimes I deliberately change it for increased clarity. I also aim to keep my interpretation to the commentary, though I might have slipped here and there. In my commentary, I refer to other traditions and philosophies. This is of course anachronistic, but I do it to better make sense of the Tao Te Ching's teachings by relating it to other thought, with my ultimate aim being to improve my understanding of the Tao Te Ching. To conclude this already lengthy introduction, I had a few axioms in mind which influenced my approach when I made the translation and commentary. 1. Coherence. While I am aware that Laozi could be really a consortium of thinkers, I assumed that the text is composed as if it was written by one person, meaning that it will be coherent and self-consistent. This coherence is evidenced by how the various chapters refer to one another, though not explicitly. I point out the links when obvious in the commentary. 2. Ambiguity. I assumed that Laozi's decision to write in this poetic aphoristic style is deliberate. He knows that ambiguity may arise, but it is part of his intention that readers will have to then try to decipher what is meant. 3. Paradox. I believe that Laozi deliberately presents paradoxes, sometimes using the device of ambiguity and sometimes directly. However, since I assume coherence, I try to resolve these paradoxes, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully. 4. Radicalness. He is aware that his teachings often are contrary to the prevailing conventions and norms. It is part of his intent to shock his readers out of their docile acceptance of the status quo. He is intentionally provocative. 5. Non-dogmatic. Though the text is presented mostly without argumentation, at least not in the analytical style common in philosophy, Laozi is not dogmatic. He may make certain claims, but these are not meant to be dictates, but provocations. Brevity. Its brevity is intentional. The Tao Te Ching is meant not as a comprehensive instruction manual, but a source of inspiration or provocation to push its readers to further try to work things out for themselves. Sincerity. While Laozi is aware of the ambiguity of his words and its provocative nature, he is sincere. He is trying to present it as simply and plainly as he can, though given the limitations of thought and language, he resorts to writing it as he has, because it is simply the best way to convey his message and intent. 8. Non-theistic. The Tao can be understood theistically or non-theistically. I adopt a non-theistic stance given that I'm an atheist, though I recognize how the Tao can be seen from a theistic point of view. The Tao and its references to heaven and earth can be interpreted as nature, the way Benedictus de Spinoza has considered it as Deus siva natura, God as nature. Despite being thousands of years old, the Tao Te Ching has aged remarkably well. A lot of its prescriptions still apply today. Some of its ideas are surprisingly modern, even postmodern. Its influence on Chinese thought is unmistakable even when considered separately from its impact as a major religion in China and around the world. But it is best you consider its importance, profundity, and wisdom from the text itself. Please consider this a trailer for the series, of which I'll release the first part next week. It will probably take some months when I release this on a weekly basis, since there are 81 chapters and the text runs to over 70 pages. I've released this introduction separately from the text itself, since some listeners may want to revisit this subsequently and not want to hear my bothersome little introduction once again. Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.